Hello, everyone. My name is Lesley Deutch. I'm a principal at John Burns Real Estate Consulting. Myself and my esteemed panel here are here to talk to you about the Florida housing markets. I'm going to introduce the panel real quick. Just by way of introduction, again, I'm a principal at John Burns Real Estate Consulting. I am based here actually in South Florida. We work with the developers and builders all across the country, primarily in the Southeast. I run the Southeast division, helping them find the best homes to put on their lands, the best prices, how to sell them fast enough, and everything to do with home building and real estate. So with me today, I'll first introduce Jim Leiferman. He is the president of Madami Homes US. Madami, for those of you who don't know, has homes across the country, which keeps Jim on lots of airplanes. Charlotte, Phoenix, Raleigh, Tucson, Minnesota, and tons in Florida, all over the state. He oversees all aspects of the company operations, of the U.S. operations, including land development, home building, and strategic growth. And I found it fascinating reading his bio. Madami, and you can see it in the news, and you can see it really everywhere in Florida. They have tripled in size since you started in 2013, is it? 13? Yes, ma'am. And tripled in size, and they plan to double from there through 2022. So Jim is a very busy person. And has a lot of good insight, and he says he's going to talk a ton. So we're going to get him to tell us all about everything he knows. Next to him is Mike Belmont. Mike is the president of Minto Communities USA. Minto has holdings primarily in Florida, tons in Canada, but primarily in Florida, Naples, Palm Beach, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Daytona, among others. Two of Mike's biggest holdings to date is Westlake, which was the former Callery Judge Groves in Palm Beach County. It's going to be 4,500 homes. It just opened a few months ago to some raving success that he will talk about, and 2 million square feet of commercial in suburban Palm Beach County. And then the fun stuff, and we'll get Mike to spill a lot of his great statistics, is he opened Latitude Margaritaville. So that's the first active adult age-restricted Margaritaville branded community in the U.S., and that's in Daytona Beach. That'll be about 300 homes and 1,600 acres. So lots of interesting projects to talk about. And last but not least, we've got Chris Ward, who's a principal of Pablo Creek Land. Chris has acquired and entitled and developed more than 12,000 residential lots valued at a gross value of over $1 billion throughout the East Coast. He formed Pablo Creek Land, and he's based in Jacksonville. So he's involved of all aspects of the home building industry, from business planning to entitlements to horizontal and vertical development and acquisition. So he's got a great perspective on Jacksonville and the Southeast as well. So I'm going to structure this a little different, me being a consultant. So what we're going to do, we were tasked with giving you an entire overview of the Florida housing market in 45 minutes or less. So that's easy, right? We're going to do a quick market overview from our perspective. We're going to do the who, what, when, where, and why of Florida housing market. So who are the builders? What are they looking for? When will they buy? What markets will see the strongest growth? And how do we overcome any obstacles to meet this demand? So I think we're all in agreement. We talked before. We've got a lot of opportunity for the home building industry in Florida. And we're going to tell you everything from beginning to end quickly. All right, I'm going to give you a really short overview of Florida's housing market, and feel free to jump in with questions at the end. We'll open up to questions. This will be a kind of a quick overview. Our company rates all the markets across the U.S. So we rate them every single month. We talk to builders in every single market. We've got 17 offices across the country, and we rate them based on what the market conditions are today. So very slow. There are no housing markets in the U.S. that are very slow. There are about 10% of the housing markets considered slow. The only one that pops up there is Fort Myers. My goal in Fort Myers is to get it going again. It's a little slow and late to the game. There's not a lot of affordable homes there, and that's what they need. Normal is where you see most of the Florida markets, which really means that you're seeing some small but moderate price appreciation and some good demand. A few strong markets, a lot of the tech markets across the U.S., and unfortunately no very strong markets, which is another word for bubble, so we're okay with that. The economy is really, really strong. And Spencer referred to this earlier on. We have a lot of job growth in Florida, and these are just pure total numbers. Orlando and Tampa lead the pack. This is the last 12 months of jobs, adding 3,600 and 2,800 respectively. Fort Lauderdale and Miami are still seeing really, really good 12-month job growth. Sarasota, Jacksonville, a little bit slower. They are smaller markets, but year-over-year growth has been pretty good. West Palm and Naples, a little bit slower, but they're really based on that, that tourism and the retiree coming back. And finally, we still have Fort Myers, which you saw was slow in the last chart. Job growth is declining, but a lot of that has to do with a lot of the jobs are being formed in Naples right now in the home building industry. Quick look at Florida across the board. Tampa has seen the strongest single-family permit growth, which includes single-family homes as well as townhomes. So the activity is in Tampa. Fort Myers is coming off, it's a percent change, so it's coming off a very, very low base. Jacksonville, Orlando, West Palm, we're seeing a lot of growth. Miami, that is the single-family market, so that has slowed a little bit. That's a pretty small percentage of what's happening in Miami, not the condos. The biggest problem, and we'll talk about this on our panel, that we see right now is affordability. So what this is showing you is 5, that green line going down the middle, is a metro area's historical affordability. That's where they should be in terms of prices, in terms of what people can afford and how they can buy homes. And you can see Miami is, all of the markets really are over that 5 mark, which is technically overpriced, but really means expensive. And that'll be one of our challenges. Land is expensive, labor is expensive, construction is expensive. So that's been, I think, a hindrance to faster pace of growth in Florida's home building industry. Finally, I'm just going to wrap up. I'm going to give you my quick overview of the market. This is more qualitative. I travel the state consistently, so these are kind of my thoughts of what's happening. Miami, you've got a big slowdown in condo demand, but single family is starting to improve because people are looking for affordability. Fort Lauderdale is all about the infill market. You're seeing a lot of golf course renovations, golf course redevelopments into homes in Fort Lauderdale, and the condo market is starting to pick up, but not like Miami. It's a real primary condo market there. We move to West Palm. West Palm has a lot of opportunity, and Mike is going to talk a little bit about that, but you have to watch the affordability. The prices keep going up, and demand is starting to slow. So the land is expensive, and that's been a real concern for West Palm. Jacksonville is a boom town in St. Johns County. We'll get to that too. Demand is really concentrated under 400,000 for the most part. And the school district is really driving the demand. Everyone wants to be in the best school district, but those impact fees are going up rapidly, which is making new construction under 400 very difficult. Orlando. So Orlando, Spencer also referred to that in the beginning. It's got a very diverse job base. It's probably the strongest housing market in the state right now. Home prices are still going up. You're seeing a lot of different submarkets with a lot of different demand and different price points. Tampa, I have another strong outlook on Tampa. Affordability still drives home sales in Tampa, but they are seeing an influx of young people, which they haven't seen before. So that's really going to drive that entry-level housing market in the future. Sarasota has been rediscovered, one of my favorite markets in the U.S. because it's in between Tampa and Naples. So Sarasota it provides a value to Naples, and many people are moving and retiring to Sarasota in droves. Fort Myers, we are predicting some stronger growth here in 2018. Midwest buyer is still the buyer there. They need some more affordable product that's coming out of the ground, so you'll start to see that improvement. Naples is already reported a very, very strong housing season, a selling season this year, so the buyers are back. That's the tax laws up north. They're bringing the New Yorkers, I had to say it, the New Yorkers back down. And finally, I can't forget the Panhandle. So Panhandle, there's a lot of land there. There's a lot of builders that are kind of starting to peek in at the Panhandle to see where the opportunities are. And St. Joe's has a big holding there, so it's something to watch. Okay, we're going through our who's. I flew through that. So who is our buyer? This is one of my favorite charts, and Jim says, doesn't everybody know that? But if you look at the next 10 years, this is the US, you look at the next 10 years, where are the household formations coming? Where are we growing? And we are growing in the ages 25 to 44 is going to add 3.3 million households, and 65 plus is going to add 10.2 million households. So this has huge implications for the housing market because that middle ground, that move-up buyer that a lot of the builders build for is going to be actually declining over the next 10 years. So with that, I think as a backdrop, I'm going to turn to my panel. I'll start with you, Jim. So you have product all over the state of Florida, catering to really all ages, but you have seen some really good traction on these younger buyers and these older buyers. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your plans are for 10 years now and over the next decade to kind of cater to this demographic?
Yeah, thanks, Lesley. We do larger planned master communities or master planned communities, large scale, so 1,000 units to 10,000 units. And it allows us to attack different buyers within those master planned communities, leverage our efficiencies by having one-stop shopping, and go after those buyer groups. For us, the younger groups, the first-time buyers, millennials, we tend to service those with townhome product in good locations, as opposed to doing single-family detached out in the tertiary B and C markets. So that's where we hit the younger guys. And the older guys, because I'm one of those now, are getting close. We tend to hit them with age-targeted product, so everybody wants a ranch plan. They want to be close to town. They want medical doctors. They want to be close to kids. They want it all. And at 10,000 of them a day turning 65, we're going to be seeing a lot of them.
Right. And Mike, do you want to talk? Your two biggest land holdings caters perfectly to this. Westlake is a family market, and Margaritaville is your retiree buyer. And was that strategic? Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the successes there?
Yeah, I think it's real important that you buy the land right. We were fortunate enough to, in West Palm Beach, buy a tremendous property, take it through a rezoning, and actually increase the units from 2,900 to 4,500. So that has a lot to do with the fact that we can open at an affordable price. We opened October 28th. Had about 3,000 people show up for the grand opening during a tropical storm. And a lot of it had to do with the pent-up demand because of pricing. Pricing in Palm Beach County is very expensive. We started at $270 to high 400s, and we've sold about, I think it's 93 since opening in October, which is pretty good pace. And it's not just the lower price product that's selling. We're selling a nice mix of product. I think there was pent-up demand in Palm Beach County. I think there were a lot of families living in rentals, whether it be apartment or homes, and because we're seeing folks being able to not have a home to sell and can move in quickly. So our Palm Beach community is really focused more on, I think, that family, starting family, people who may have lived downtown that now have gotten married and are starting a family. So that's probably more the typical market. We are seeing some move-down buyers as well from the local area. In Daytona Beach, we opened up our Latitude Margaritaville community on November 13th, and we've had tremendous success. We've sold 230 homes thus far, no models. The models opened up last Saturday and had 2,600 people show up, and we're seeing 200 people a day. This is an age-targeted, 55 or better community that has attracted followers of the Latitude lifestyle, based largely on Jimmy Buffett, but much broader, much more expansive than just Jimmy Buffett. It's a state of mind, relaxation. So it really bodes well with the retirement and the lifestyle that we're offering. So we've been very, very pleased with both of those communities in the 2 to 3 months we've been open. So we're pretty excited about that.
And Chris is will you talk a little bit about Jacksonville? So Jacksonville's a great market to explain this because you've got a lot of young families that have been catered to with the new home market, but there's an affordability issue. So what have you seen in Jacksonville that has really targeted sort of these two demographics? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, currently there's a spread right now between new and resales of about $100,000. Median household or median price for new home construction right now is about $289 in Jacksonville. Resales and attached new is actually about $190. So we're finally starting to see in Jacksonville a shift to smaller product. Developers are starting to bring on 40-foot wide lots, 30-foot product, and where there's kind of been a lull in the attached product, townhome. you're starting to see more of that starting to ramp up in Jacksonville. Jacksonville's got, I think we added 15,000 jobs last year, and we did about 10,000 permits. So it's a robust market with a lot of job growth, and a lot of the developers and builders are really focused on their first-time entry-level buyer right now.
Okay. So that's the who. So now we're going to go into what are they looking for? What kind of homes are these people looking for? I have brought here, we do a consumer insights survey that just closed like 2 weeks ago. It was about 24,000 people nationwide. About 2,000 people answered it in the state of Florida. These are all new home shoppers, and they gave us some of our preferences. So what's the most important thing for all of these people in Florida? This is the Florida answers for a new home, new community. They're looking for safety. They're looking for location and street appeal. For their new home features, they want design, price, and function. And I haven't shown this, well, they haven't looked at the slides yet, so I'm going to see if our survey answers are matching what some of these products they're building. So pay attention, panel. Ready? Where do they want to live? So it's Florida, so there's not a whole lot of urban living in Florida, so there's a small percentage who want to live urban. 50% of them want to live suburban, and suburban is a name that we use for living out in the suburbs, but convenient to some restaurant, convenient to some, you can walk to a grocery store or a coffee shop, but feeling like you're giving up your true suburban home, and you still have that opportunity to be local, to be part of a slight urban environment. Suburban, there's still a strong demand for suburban and also for rural in the state of Florida. And their style. So this was actually quite interesting. So 49%, almost half the people, like a traditional style home on the inside. And that goes to where they shop. That's a pottery barn, a crate and barrel type store. And on the exteriors, we have almost 60% wanted traditional, and a smaller percentage wanted modern, but there's still that move. So we always have, in terms of architectural styles, and we'll talk a little about this, but Madami does a good job of providing different elevations for different homes across the country. So some of the big statistics that you'll see, and you'll see if you see these in your communities, in your hometowns, 87% of Floridians, new home shoppers, are looking for a single-family detached home. 61% want a one-story home, and then the rest of them want the master down, something we talked about. 45% want their next home to be larger in size. 53% are looking for a home that's less than 2,500 square feet. 72% of people looking for a home today in Florida expect to pay less than $450,000. 44% want homes with a 3-car garage, and the rest want 2 cars. So that's really important to these Florida shoppers, more than the actual US. 23% expect to consider putting an elderly parent, and another 21% expect to have an 18-plus child. So I'm going to ask you if you're changing, or if you've seen any change in the way homes are built to accommodate these changing demographics. And finally, 64% are looking for a guard gate, and they'll pay $35 for that safety, and that goes back to the safety. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Jim. Do you want to talk about some of the different trends that you do see in your market, maybe with the different elevations and things like that?
Yeah, like I said before, all they want is everything. And that's kind of what you went through. All they want is everything, and they don't want to pay a lot for it. We did find, and Madami kind of prides itself on being thoughtful in our architectural styles. We're not afraid to design new product for every community. If it makes sense, we will reuse. And I've got a stable of outside architects that we use and go to quite often. So that brings some variety. It brings some new thinking as to architecture. We've got a Canadian architect, we've got a traditional US architect, and then we've got some guys out from the West Coast that contribute to the architectural palette as well. I think Tapestry here in Orlando is probably best representative. Tapestry is a 1,100 unit job in Kissimmee. And you'd never really, if you're from Orlando, you'd never think architectural diversity in Kissimmee would be heard in the same sentence. But what we found is that there was a sea of sameness out there in the market, and the buyer wanted to move away from that sea of sameness, that Florida traditional look. So we introduced some craftsmen, we introduced some contemporary, and it's been well received. You still have, and it varies by buyer group. The younger folks that can afford it will go for the contemporary. because they're more accepting of change. The little bit older guys, they like the traditional.
Mike, do you want to talk about some of the floor plan layouts? Have you changed any of the layouts over the last few years to accommodate, the elderly parent or the 18-plus child? It's the same thing, right?
Well, I think the one statistic regarding detached single family, we've in our active adult communities in Latitude Margaritaville, we have a paired villa, about 50% of the product, and we have 3,000 homes there, so 50% are a paired villa. So that's been very popular. It provides a roof mate, makes it a little easier if you're not a full-time resident. So I think that's important. I think the other thing I noticed on the slide, I didn't see lifestyle. So in our active adult communities, lifestyle is paramount. And lifestyle has to be very active, it has to be fun, and that's what really the retiree buyer is looking for. And to tag along with what Jim had said, what we found in Naples, we opened a community, Isles of Collier Preserve, 3 years ago, and the market research we had done, they were saying Med is dead. The Naples market had been just replete with Mediterranean style. So we came in with a coastal isle architecture, and it had been very, very successful. So I think you have to look at, even though that's the state of Florida, I still think it's market by market. There are some subtle differences.
How about you, Chris? Do you see the demand in these certain preferences?
I do, and to kind of piggyback on Mike, I think, one thing that kind of separates some of those larger master plan communities is their amenity package. Up in Jacksonville, there's a developer doing Twin Creeks, is building a 15-acre man-made lake that's going to have basically circulate water through it so people can paddleboard. Knockety's got zip lining and these monstrous amenities. So all the bigger master plans are trying to separate themselves a little bit with their amenity packages, which are starting to get pretty massive. As far as product itself, to address some of the move-down buyers as well as the affordability, what you're seeing some of the builders do, like Richmond American Homes, is introduce the Seasons product where they've shrunk the square footage, but they're still giving you the same, bedroom count and bathroom count that you would have gotten in a home, say, 5 or 6 years ago. And they've done that by shrinking the bedroom sizes and some of the other areas that are not used as much as, we typically did. So some of the bedroom sizes they found, the buyers' kids aren't spending as much time in the bedrooms, so they shrink those down a little bit, and we're able to add some more room to the living space, but the overall square footages of the product shrink down a little bit to kind of address the affordability.
Right. Okay, we're moving on to when. So when are they going to move? This is one of my favorite charts as an economist and a home building research person, but what this shows you is the future change in adult population. So this is, again, talking about the next 10 years. This is the growth of population over the next 10 years. Highlighted here are the people that are living in the cities today. This is the next 10 years. These are the young people and the empty nesters that go to the cities, the urban areas first. The growth there is not that impressive. This is the 10-year look forward. But what is impressive and what is really massive is this. This is the millennials moving out of the cities, going to the suburbs with their families. And this is the people moving out, the empty nesters moving out of the urban areas, going into the suburbs for their true retirement. So I think when I say this, and we talked about the suburban and we talked about different aspects of this, but Florida is really going to benefit over the next 10 years from this trend. This is most of Florida, besides maybe Miami and parts of Fort Lauderdale, is considered relatively suburban. And we expect to see this kind of massive influx. And I was happy to have the panel that we have. We've got some pictures of some of the master plans that are really catering to this influx. Because we're talking about when they're going to move, I have to have a picture of a truck. But this is actually quite interesting. We follow U-Haul statistics. And U-Haul prices are dependent. They change based on how many people are moving into a market. So the more expensive a market is, the higher the premium is for the U-Haul truck. So you can see that Atlanta's number 1, but Jacksonville actually hits their number 2. Tampa is 7, and Orlando's 10. There's a huge immigration of people coming to these markets that probably aren't quite reflected yet in the population statistics. So what I thought I'd do, Jim talked a little bit about Tapestry, but when we had a discussion about this panel, we said, these builders here, and Chris as well, living in Jacksonville, are really taking advantage of this suburban trend. So we have, these are the pictures of Tapestry you're talking about. If you want to talk a little bit about that, or some of the other projects you have that are really capturing some of the suburban trend.
Yeah, Tapestry for us was our first really large master plan community here in the U.S. As I said, it's about 1,100 units. It's in Kissimmee, which again, very ethnically diverse, traditionally considered down market. And we did a lot of research and found that there's a buyer group, a strong buyer group, that was looking for something a little more upscale. It was kind of a Hunters Creek replacement community. And so we went in large. We went in with a large amenity. It's gated, man-gated, very upscale for that market. The picture in the corner there kind of speaks to some of the architectural differences that we make. So on our corner lots, we create corner lot elevations. They cost us more money, but it's something that a consumer, they may not notice it immediately when they drive through the community, but afterwards they'll think something was different. And then they'll go in another community, another production builder's community, and they'll see nothing but blank walls on the corners, whereas we've spent the money, invested in the money to dress up that corner elevation. And oh, by the way, we're selling, I don't know, probably 200, 250 units a year here in Tapestry.
And what's the average price point? Just for
average is probably 275, 300.
Okay, Mike, you're going to tell us a little bit more about Margaritaville. I think, in my opinion, it's been one of the best examples of the demand for active adult, the demand for lifestyle, and that move. Because Daytona, maybe you could talk a little bit about the location in Daytona. Sure. Wouldn't necessarily be, the top #1 market you would think of.
Well, I think it's important to realize that Daytona and the intersection of LPGA and I-95 is actually a very, very dynamic area. Much of the land is owned by one company, consolidated to Mocha, so that is really now coming into an age of its own with outlet malls and commercial development. That the timing was really right for this housing. We're right off I-95, 75,000 cars a day pass the exit to our community. It's right before you get to I-4. So I think it's a great location. We were able to buy the land right. We bought a hotel over on the ocean. We tore it down, and we're going to have a private beach club for the residents. And we're able to create this lifestyle. We're going to build 40,000 square foot of recreation amenities. And it's all going to be about music, fun, excitement. The community is golf cart accessible. We've sold the property up front, and we will have a retail commercial with a grocer and other like uses. We're 5 minutes from 2 great hospitals. There's educational opportunities. So everything you need is found within minutes of the site. And the other important aspect of it is it's affordable. Our prices run from $240,000 to about $350,000, which is what we believe is the sweet spot to get the volume you need in a 3,000 lot community. We also have an option on an additional 3,000 units right next door. So if we can get into a pace of 300 to 400 homes a year, that would really be an amazing feat, I think, for the Daytona market.
And do you want to elaborate a little bit where your buyers are coming from? That we were talking about that. It's an interesting point.
So we prior to opening the models, we sold about 230 homes. We actually had a camp out the night before. We opened the community on November 13th. People started showing up the Sunday before. We had tents, entertainment, food. So most of those were local. And when I mean local, it's the greater Florida area. So I'd say about half of our 230 buyers are from Florida, with the other half being states nearby, Georgia, North Carolina, and then we see a lot of Midwesterners. I know 4 of the buyers are from California. They were really intrigued by the Latitude lifestyle, and they probably were able to sell their house, buy one of ours, and put $500,000 in the bank. So it's really so far been a pretty diverse crowd. We also opened up our Latitude Margaritaville Hilton Head in South Carolina 2 weekends ago. We had about 600 people show up. Our models won't be ready till June, but a little different buyer, demographic, and location, but we think that'll have as much of the same appeal as Daytona.
Okay, Chris, you're going to talk about the ultimate suburban lifestyle, which is Knockety in Jacksonville.
Yeah, this was a master plan community. the land was originally owned by the Davis family that owned Winn-Dixie. I believe it's about 25,000 total units that kind of got started ramping up prior to the downturn. They've got multiple master amenity packages kind of located throughout the community. They annexed the property into Ponte Vedra, so it has a Ponte Vedra address, which is very appealing to a lot of the buyers. It's catering to not only the family buyer, but also the active adult buyer. There's a Del Webb presence there, which is age targeted. It is the place to be in Jacksonville. I think Lesley told me the other day it was the third fastest growing master plan in the country. In Jacksonville, the market, Duval County schools are not as desirable. St. Johns County has the best rated schools, public schools in the state of Florida. So what you've seen is a lot of the families that may have originally started out close to the urban core have now kind of migrated down to St. Johns County. Put your child in a private education, it's $20,000 a year on average, 25, versus you move to St. Johns County, you got A-rated schools. So it's highly desirable. It's finally really starting to get some commercial presence there inside the community, so people don't have to drive 30 minutes back into the urban core for shopping. So it's, they just keep kind of blowing the roof off their numbers right now. It's pretty amazing.
Thank you. Okay, so where? So we're going to fly through some of the Florida housing markets. So where are we going to see the strongest growth going forward? It'll be interesting because both Mike and Jim have assets really all over the state. So here we look at 2017 permits. So right now, Orlando is really starting to see a lot of traction, a lot of construction activity, followed by Tampa and Jacksonville. These are our forecasts for 2021. The order tends to stay the same. West Palm, helped out by Westlake a little bit, inches up past Naples. But I think I'm going to turn it to the panel to talk about what markets you're focused on. What markets do you really expect to see the strongest growth? Jim, you want to start on that one?
Yeah, why am I always starting?
Okay, fine.
No, I'll take it. We like Orlando. We like Orlando a lot. Our first closings in Orlando were in 2010, and next year we'll probably do about 900. We'll touch on 900 closings for the year. We're well positioned around town. We bought the last, I guess I can't technically say the last of Celebration, but we bought the last of Celebration, bought about 1,200 units in that property, and we're really proud of that. So we like what the Nona guys, and if Zabora were here, I'd credit them. We like what those guys have done out in Lake Nona, what Tavistock has done, in that they've added another leg to the stool of the economy here in Orlando with their medical centers. So we like Orlando. Our largest position in the U.S., we have 10,000 acres in Sarasota. And while Knockety may be the third, I think we were the fourth largest, fastest growing MPC in the U.S. That corridor is seeing about 1,200 units a year, and so we'll capture an outsized share of those closings. But I like our hand. I like Orlando. I like Tampa. We're just getting started in the southeast side, but Orlando for us is probably going to be the horse for a while.
Okay. Mike, I know I don't have Daytona on here, so I apologize because
Well,
you are Daytona.
Right. Permits have doubled, I think, since we opened up. But agreeing with Jim on all those markets, but we're focused obviously with our acquisition of Westlake, 3,800 acres, 4,500 units. There's very limited land in Palm Beach County that you can develop. So while Naples and West Palm are at the bottom of the list in terms of permit growth, the assets we control are premium assets in those markets, and in a market where there's very little supply and strong demand, we really like our positions in both Naples and West Palm.
Right, because what's not shown on here is obviously home prices, right? So Orlando might have some lower home prices than a West Palm or a Naples, but sees stronger construction activity.
Yeah, and I think by and large, there's less competition. Certain market segments in Orlando can be pretty competitive, right, which have an adverse impact on margins.
Chris, how about you? I know you're in Jacksonville, but you work across the state. Is there any markets? One of the things that I hear about Jacksonville that maybe you can qualify for me is that it's the new halfback. So it's taking over the Carolinas as for some retirees. It's kind of the new location of retirees.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, job growth has been pretty amazing in Jacksonville. City has added a bunch of jobs where they've actually are offering incentives to people that work in New York City to move down to Jacksonville. They take a little bit of a pay cut, but their tax rate goes down, so it's really a raise. Amazon has built 2 fulfillment centers, one on the west side that's under construction and one on the north side that recently opened. St. Johns County is the area that's kind of had the growth due to the good schools, but that's kind of, with all the new communities that have come online over the last 2 to 3 years, some of the competition's gotten to be a little bit more fierce. The real area of growth that a lot of the builders are focused on in Jacksonville right now is kind of the north and the west side of 295. There's a lot of vacant land. That's where we can find property we can get our builders into lots in the high 40s to low $55,000 per lot, which puts the average sales price around $250,000, which is kind of that sweet spot for Jacksonville. But as you move further south, we're starting to see more activity in Palm Coast, Flagler County, believe it or not. There weren't a lot of distressed lots in that market coming out of the downturn, so it took a long time for the pricing to kind of lift to where developers really felt comfortable coming back in and developing finished lots. And, I believe pretty strongly in the Flagler County corridor down to Volusia, that whole connection back down kind of to I-4 is really starting to kind of heat up, and you're seeing some guys make some big purchases in those areas.
That's interesting. And as you'll see from this chart, as we switch to that, some of these numbers for 2021 are actually below the current numbers now. And it's not because we don't think that the demand is out there, but there's a lot of challenges to build a home that is affordable to home buyers. So I think what we'll do is when we get to the why, how, let's talk a little bit about what are the struggles, what are the obstacles to building. We've seen that there's a lot of growth, and there's a lot of opportunity in the household formations, but how do we get over some of the growth? One of the charts I tend to show a lot is there's maybe it's technology is the answer, right? Katerra is trying to build a better way of building a home, a cheaper way of construction. Maybe there are almost disruptors in here that makes part of the home building process less expensive, and that we can deliver affordable homes. But I'll turn it over to the panel. I'll let Mike go first this time. But just to talk about what are some of your biggest challenges? You have land and you've got property, but to meet kind of the demand and the affordability requirements going forward.
Well, I still think regulation is a big issue. Our community in Palm Beach County, it took 2 years to get the entitlements we wanted. Actually longer than that if you look at the water management district permits and some of the others. So regulations, and even though it's a much easier state to develop in now in Florida than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago, I would suspect that pendulum's going to swing back maybe as soon as the next election. And regulations add a lot of cost to the overall development. So that's a challenge right now. The labor market is a bit of a challenge. You're paying more for labor. You're paying more for materials. Your cycle time, which is the amount of time it takes to build a home, has been increasing because it just you don't in Orlando you might get a 2 to 3 person frame crew where you need much larger crews than that to move the homes along at a proper pace. So I think there's still some challenges out there. Luckily, the markets have been able to withstand some price increases as you go. But as interest rates get higher and affordability becomes a bigger issue, we may not be able to recoup the cost with further price increase.
Chris, I'll move to you. I'll let you go last. What do you see in the housing market in Florida as the biggest challenges over the next couple of years?
I think it would be the affordability and the availability of cheap land that's in a desirable location. These move down buyers that are in that category, they have some equity. They're moving from the Northeast. They're not going to have the challenges. But finding lots and land that you can replicate something that's in that affordability range for somebody to buy in the $250 average price point in Jacksonville, and pretty much everywhere is pretty challenging. The way that we've kind of overcome that is partnering with builders that have lower cost of capital, partnering with landowners, doing joint ventures to kind of reduce some of the interest carry that we may have to have on some of our projects. But I would say land and the entitlement process is probably the most challenging component right now.
Jim, how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, for us, it's a little different because our hand's pretty full, or not pretty full, but it's fairly full on the horizontal side. So it's about getting them built. And for those of you out there that are involved on the vertical side of the business, it's a miracle we get stuff done. I mean, just way of example, I'm doing a remodel at the house, and I'm quote unquote El Jefe, and it's still hell to actually get stuff done at the house, and I'm the quote unquote boss. So it's the trades, it's a labor challenge. It's, to Mike's point, it's not just the quantity of the labor that you're getting, but it's the quality of the labor that's showing up. It's a different crew every day. Getting things done right the first time is a lost art, and it costs us as well as our trades money. So it's really a trade problem, and it goes across the country. You know, anecdotally, Tucson, one of our drywall guys, he's accustomed to having 20 work permits a year for his drywallers. This year he got 5. And I don't think that's an isolated occurrence. So, you know, the whole conversation around immigration reform, just throwing a wall up is not going to do it. We have to be smart about how we do the immigration reform, and we got to work hard to get trades in that can do the work.
Okay. And since I don't want to end on a challenges note, I'm going to ask each one of the panelists, what are you most looking forward to? Where do you see, and it doesn't have to be a place or necessarily, but do you see it, any major opportunities, and what are you most excited about? We'll just leave it for the next year. Chris, do you want to start out with that one?
I think the opportunity is also what I just talked about is the challenge, being able to find those pieces of land that can add value and to the builders and be able to create good communities. That's the opportunity, and people that know their craft and they know their markets and what their buyers want. You know, I think that creates great opportunities for the developers and the builders in all the different markets.
Mike, how about you?
I think it's really growing our Margaritaville brand, active adult. If you look at some of the first charts and the aging population, there are things like the tax laws that tend to favor the state of Florida and other sunshine states. So I think we have a great deal of road ahead of us to expand that brand significantly.
Jim?
So for us, we're a May 31st year end, so the biggest thing I'm looking forward to is June 1st right now. But actually, in the business side of it, I think what I'm most excited about is opening pitch in spring training of 2019. We're moving the Atlanta Braves down to our site in Sarasota County, and that site's under construction today, and we're anticipating, hopeful, for spring training 2019 to move to Sarasota County.
Great. Okay, I think with that, we conclude our panel, but we are all happy to take any questions that anyone has about any markets or the industry in general. I know we have microphones. We have microphones here. Does anyone have any questions? Questions? Oh, we got lots of questions. I'll let them.
Hi. So last night we were engaged, a handful of people in this room were engaged in an interesting conversation. 1 in 49 transactions for single-family homes since the recession have only been for the owner-occupier. 48 have been non-owner-occupier or rentals. And then kind of goes forward that now there's debt available for kind of the equivalent of multifamily folks that want to build a bunch of equivalent single-family homes and start building for-rent single-family homes. And Willie Walker of Walker Dunlop, big billion-dollar company, said the cap rates are twice that of multifamily. Are you guys running into that where people want to come build 500-700 single-family homes or buy a lot of your product all at once to do rental?
We haven't seen that. I know in Texas that's actually pretty prevalent. I know one of the companies that's doing it, they just opened up an Atlanta office to look at that. But I think the challenge there, just like the challenge for us, is you don't have that kind of lot supply on the ground ready to go. So they'd be faced with the same challenges of expensive land, onerous regulations, and getting out of the ground. Unless they do it in some of the still tertiary markets where there may be some projects that just have not come back to pre-recession days.
So for us, we're having some conversations with some of the BTR guys. It's the hot niche right now. And so I think some of those guys are still trying to figure it out. They don't want to necessarily do 5 to 700, they want to start with, let's do 200. And we were talking about it earlier before the panel. It's going to be interesting to see those guys, how they unfold, because they want what we want. They want 200 lots in a great school district at a reasonable, affordable price. Well, that's what the builders want. So why would I give it up? Because they're not prepared with the infrastructure to actually deliver on that. They want to come to us and basically have us GC it for them. However, in some of our larger communities, Starwood here in Orlando, even West Villages, Rivertown, there's an opportunity to knock off a couple hundred units. And for us, it'd be a return of capital. It accelerates that return of capital, as long as we can be convinced by Lesley and the other smart ones in the room that it doesn't cannibalize our for sale market. We don't think it will, because we think there's a distinct difference between the renters and the buyers. Some of those renters will actually, much as have an apartment complex across from a townhome development, they actually become our prospects down the road. So we're in early stages of having those conversations.
We have seen that in Jacksonville. American Homes for Rent, who's been buying a ton of homes, they actually acquired a development that I had 75 lots last year, about in March, to do that exact same thing. They bought fully engineered lots. They're developing right now. Their product's about to start coming out of the ground pretty soon. They made a transition about 2 years ago from just buying the distress to actually buying new homes. They were buying some LGI homes in one community in Jacksonville, and now they've kind of evolved, and they're actually building in Charlotte, Raleigh, Atlanta, Orlando, and Jacksonville. So they're starting to kind of ramp that model up a little bit. It was originally, I believe, supposed to be sort of for that, built to rent model. They have met a lot of resistance from the national builders and the local guys, because quite honestly, it's not a place, that you want to compete against, kind of like what Jim said. So there may be some shifting to maybe that sell side a little bit, but also retaining some of the rental properties within one community.
Thank you guys for coming. What would you say is the availability of financing for homeowners right now? Is it stronger than it was earlier in the cycle? Is it still very difficult for people buying your homes to get financing? Are they going to alternative financing sources? And does that affect your strategy? For example, if people are using cash versus financing to buy their homes? Just really a question about debt and how it's affecting your projects.
Mike and I will probably have similar answers, although I can't necessarily speak for them. About a quarter, a third of our buyers pay cash. That's where they are in their life cycle, and they'll just pay cash versus taking on debt. Debt is easier. Mortgage financing is easier than it was several years ago. The demand is strong enough that we don't have to necessarily wait around for a challenge credit to mature and get to where they can move into a house. So we're pretty selective. We have a captive mortgage company, and I think our average FICO is like 720. So we're seeing strong credit, and haven't seen the need to delve beyond that, because frankly, we struggle building for the guys who have that 720.
Yeah, I would agree. We have about 40% of our buyers are cash. So the other 60%, if they're real buyers, they can qualify. And there's some programs out there. They're not alternative programs, but there are some 3% programs, depending on your values. In Palm Beach, I think the FHA value is $350, and we have ample product below that. So there are ways to get mortgages for real buyers.
Mike, do you want to talk about what you're doing at Minto, at Lesley with the down payment?
So we have a couple of things. We're doing a 3% discount to civil servants, first responders, military, and we're also the city of Westlake, which the community of Westlake is also its own municipality. So the city of Westlake has a down payment assistance program where we, as the builder and other builders, will pay a fee, and it will be a fee that's sustained when you sell your house. It'll be a fee. And that'll go into a fund that'll allow certain people that meet federal income requirements to receive down payment assistance. And that is a grant given to you, and if you stay in your home for 10 years, it's paid off. You don't have to refund it. So it's a very unique program that was created in the city of Westlake. And actually, I think he's in the room. John Carter, one of our vice presidents, really worked hard to put that together. And I saw on the Palm Beach Post yesterday or today, Palm Beach County is now looking at taking that same exact program and implementing it. So we're excited about that because affordability is a big issue.
Back in 2005, when we had 5 hurricanes that hit Florida, and subsequent to that, there was I guess, a lot of disruption in home building here, and you saw a big increase in the number of homes built in the Carolinas from people that wanted to, I guess, get some protection from hurricanes. Last year, not necessarily here in Florida, but there were several devastating hurricanes that affected the market. Have you seen any change in what people are asking for in a home in terms of the building quality or location or anything related to the potential damage of a future hurricane?
Well, I think if you look at the most recent storm, homes that have been built in the last 5 years really suffered very little damage. We have a large community in Naples, which was almost ground zero for Irma. And we had some issues with our screen enclosures, but very few roof tiles came off, very little damage to the homes. We had a lot of landscape damage. But I think the current building code has provided a method of construction where it's not nearly as devastating as it was 10, 15 years ago, or when Hurricane Andrew, let's say, when that came in, and I don't know what that was, 30 years ago. But so our buyers haven't been really too concerned. We opened up Daytona in November, 2 months after the storm, and we didn't experience any pushback. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well. The lack of structural damage in the market. If you recall back in those days in 2005 when, what was it, Charlie and some of the other ones came through, really wrecked the mobile home parks. Not a lot of damage necessarily vertical to the site build, but that's what caught all the attention and got all the publicity. This year, I had far more losses on landscape and entry features than we did on work in process. In the work in process, you lost some soffits, you lost some decking, but nothing catastrophic by any means. And I think that was reflected in the confidence that we're seeing from the buyers. That and there was also associated back in 2005. There's a lot of concerns over increases in insurance, and that cost of living increase is what bumped some of them up to the Carolinas. But if you've kept track of the weather, Carolinas has had their share. That East Coast has had their share of storm events as well. So I still hold people like FL, that Florida designator in their mailing address, and it's not running them off.
Gentlemen, first let me say, nice to learn how to use a microphone. I really appreciate a lot of your comments, but with all the data that has been floated out there, let me tell you what I'm seeing, and it really distresses me. And by the way, I serve on the board of the Florida Home Builders Association. I love builders. I love the enthusiasm. I love all that you're doing. Lesley, your company is the best at providing data, but here's the real problem. We're not overcoming the real serious problems we have in Florida. I came down here 40 years ago when everybody noticed that there was a real problem with both traffic, infrastructure, and schools. Hasn't gotten a lot better in 40 years. The political instability in Tallahassee has gotten worse, not better. But let me even get to the most important part, jobs. We see numbers about Orlando's got 30,000 new jobs, in Fort Lauderdale, 20,000 new jobs, et cetera, et cetera. How many of those jobs are paying over $50,000 a year? Because if your buyers are not retirees, that's what you need. Otherwise, they're renting, and that doesn't help you. So my question really, and I'm giving all this data, my question is, do we see a horizon that is getting brighter? Do we see that there are jobs, real jobs, high-paying jobs being created? Because I'm not seeing it.
And I don't have all the data by any stretch, but as I indicated earlier, I would say Orlando is definitely seeing it. The north side of town, Lake Mary, KPMG's training center coming into town, Medical City, There's a new nuclear medicine, cancer treatment going out on the west side of town. So I would say in Orlando, we are seeing some of that job formation, not so much elsewhere.
Yeah, the one thing
sorry, go ahead.
I would say is in Jacksonville, the median household income is about $58,000. The average salary may be, and that's a lot lower than that. But what you're starting to see a lot of in Jacksonville, especially, is you've got 2 people in the household that are both working, and so that's what's kind of helping them have the ability to be able to afford, the housing. But again, you're dead on as far as the affordability is probably the number one concern, especially if interest rates start kind of ticking up here over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think part of the solution there is technology. So there is more people that can work from home and telecommute than ever before, and they can choose this lifestyle. So I think that the work at home and the telecommuting is going to help the state of Florida. I agree with you. It's definitely an issue. It always has been. But the second part of that is wage growth. I mean, you start to see some of the numbers come through. We were talking about it earlier. It's very hard to find talent these days and to find people that know what they're doing and that can do a good job. And so in order to get those people, companies are paying more. So some of that's going to be solved by stronger wage growth. And my personal belief is that the wages are going up faster than what's being reported by the Census Bureau. But I don't want to be on record for, complaining about the Census Bureau. But I do see it in everyday businesses. People are being paid more for what they do because this talent is hard to find. So I think that will be part of the solution. But it's always been a problem with Florida. I agree. And I'm born here, so I get that. Yes.
Again, thank you for being here. I'm not a home builder, but I can't help but think, having heard a lot of the comments that you folks have brought forward about sensitivity to cost, what's the greatest challenge in having innovation occur with construction techniques for the residential industry? I mean, homes seem to be being built today pretty much the same way they were built 40 years ago. Some of the evolution has occurred in design and in components and materials, but from a constructability standpoint, it seems like we're still trying to build homes pretty much the same way, even though they cost increasingly more all the time.
I would agree with you. I heard something, maybe this was at the International Builder Show, but the most innovation there's been in home building is the invention of the nail gun, which if you think about it, it's not that far off. I think it is an issue, and I know we're concerned with it, but it also requires a lot of time and money to focus on that. And that's why I think as an industry, as a percentage of revenue, you just don't see the R&D like in other businesses. I think given the labor shortage right now and what we're dealing with cost, I think it's going to spur a whole lot more activity along those lines.
I would agree. You're going to see the first step is going to be going to more panelization. Yeah. So more manufacturing, roof trusses, floor joists, etc., versus site built. And I come from a company. I come from an owner that he did a moonshot 20 some odd years ago and was actually building an entire 3,200 square foot house, drywall, chandeliers, everything under roof, and then trucking it with a trailer similar to what they used for the shuttle to a foundation and dropping it on a foundation. Great ethereal values, but he lost about $70 million doing it. So until you can figure out where those economies of scale reside to get more manufacturing going on, and the kind of the elephant in the room is going to be the Chinese and Japanese companies that have made investments in our industry. We don't see that as much here in Florida, but out in Texas and on the West Coast, you see quite a bit of Sumitomos. They're not here just for sport. I mean, they're going to figure something out, and it's going to catch us off guard. But yeah, to Mike's point, it's almost like we are too damn busy during the day to stop and think about this stuff, much less actually do it. So some of that innovation is going to come from outside of the industry, or it's going to be a market leader like, let's say, Lennar. Mike said he was in their corporate offices this week, and You know, on one floor they had 120 people that are just doing R&D. I mean, that's something our type of company just can't afford.
I think you mentioned the Chinese and the Japanese, but if you look at one of the most aggressive builders that is in acquisition right now is Clayton Homes. Clayton's the largest manufacturer of mobile homes and manufactured homes. They're owned by Berkshire Hathaway, and I think they have a few $100 billion of idle money to invest. So I think you're going to see some innovation coming out of that group as well.
Yeah, eventually they'll start doing some vertical integration with their related companies.
Mm-hmm.
No. I think we have time for one more question, and then we're in between us and drinks. So do we have one more question? Yes, go ahead.
In some of the larger master plan communities that you all are doing, like Margaritaville, that are highly amenitized, what factors do you consider when deciding when to bring the various amenities online?
It's never soon enough. We're finding out. But we've actually, it's based on, we have certain milestones. Building 40,000 square feet, we're going to do it. You know, we've taken that into consideration with the design. So we have 4 10,000 square foot buildings. We're actually in for permit right now for the first one. So we can share certain things. The main fitness center can actually fit in the first building, but then as more people come in, we'll build a larger, move it out. So we are very, very clear about getting the amenities up. Having a sign that says coming soon doesn't do a lot for us, but we also have to scale it because not only is the upfront capital a pretty big investment, it's the deficit funding of the homeowner association. So, you know, we in our contracts we have milestones. At closing number 350, you know, construction will start, or like the beach club, I think we're starting that at the 300th closing. So, and luckily with the volume we're having, it's not going to be too far off.
In some instances, that depends on buyer group. For the active adult that Mike's serving, you know, they don't buy green bananas, so they want to see it today. For some of the younger families, they're not used to it, so they don't know what they're getting anyways. They do want to see progress on it, but you don't do it up front.
Okay, I think, but thank you for all the great questions. You want to join me in thanking the panel and having the time. And